Welcome to the Lair of Secrets podcast, the podcast about gaming and being a geek by two 40-something geek dads. I'm Ken Newquist, and I enjoy staying up far too late playing video games, even though I know I shouldn't.
And I'm David Moore. It was my birthday, and I'm even more middle-aged now. So, it's been a few weeks between our recordings. Hopefully our listeners, since we haven't released any yet, it will probably not be a few weeks between podcasts, but what's been going on since we've talked last, Ken?
It has been very, very adventurous in my life. My parents had a little bit of a mini disaster at their house where their hot water heater broke and flooded one of the levels of their house. Oof. And so we've been helping with cleaning that up, right? So that was... My parents have long had challenges with water, as have my wife and I. We like to joke that Newquist means the water runs through it in Swedish, which is very apropos and very I've had just about water breaking every way that you can imagine water breaking. So thankfully, and this is like, we don't live on a floodplain. Like we have historically lived on mountains, but that has not prevented the water from finding us. So I must never live on the lowland.
So you're kind of like the minor storm god in one of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books, where it just constantly rains on him because it loves him.
Right. It just, I'm always perpetually just a wee bit soggy.
Yep.
But yeah, we've been good for a while. We hadn't had any, well, I shouldn't say that. We had a hurricane remnant come through and we lost power, and our own basement was in danger of flooding because we lost the sub pump. So we had a whole family get together where my wife and my two kids and I were bailing out our basement for like 4 hours, which if you want a great workout, folks,
that's a good way to do it. Yeah.
Bailing out your basement. But it hasn't been all water and doom and storms. I've had some fun stuff that I've been able to do. So I backed the Twilight 2000 Kickstarter, which this is actually from a couple of weeks ago. And so this is role playing in the World War III that never was. And so this game has a special place in my heart because when I was in middle school, this was probably the first non-D&D game that my friends and I played. And so you have to picture, this is like 1986, 84, something like that. Like Red Dawn has just come out, right? It's one of the first PG-13 movies my friend and I have ever seen. The Cold War is at its height. The Soviet Union is a major threat. And so we're playing Twilight 2000. And one of my good friends in high school and in middle school was, he was very proud of his Russian heritage. And he just loved the military and all kinds of he was the kind of guy who would build military models and, tanks and ships and what have you, right? So he knew it all.
Cool.
And so we started playing Twilight 2000 and trying to ragtag group of Americans trapped behind enemy lines after World War III breaks out. And it's a low grade World War III. It's not like full on thermonuclear war. It's like limited nuclear exchange. So there's enough radiation that if you get exposed to enough of it, it's going to be bad for you. Mm-hmm. And it was a pretty realistic game, a fairly lethal game, but it was probably one of my first real world building experiences where you're just kind of doing like this sandboxy thing. You're not running a module. We're just doing stuff. Heavily inspired probably from Red Dawn, now that I think back on it. So when they announced this box set, I'm like, oh, this sounds cool. New version of the game published by Freedom League. So those are the folks who brought you Alien and Tales from the Loop, and I really enjoyed Tales from the Loop as did you.
Yep. And
so I think it's coming out next summer. So this is one of those, I paid for it. Now I have to remember that I bought it. So hopefully it shows up.
As a lot of Kickstarters were, about a year later.
Yeah, I mean, that's not unusual in any way. And I have faith that they're going to deliver because they've delivered on any number of great products through Kickstarter.
Right.
But I'm really looking forward to seeing this box set. Like, it's a true box set. It's going to have maps of both Poland and Sweden. And so given that my dad's side of the family is from Sweden, that'd be cool running like a World War III alternative reality game in Sweden.
Be interesting. I don't know if I can
sell that to my gaming group, but I'd love to try.
Yeah. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, I had a friend of mine in college who was really into Twilight 2000, but his game was full up, so I didn't have a chance to play. But it always seemed like an interesting game. It also seemed like you and I grew up, toward the end of the Cold War. And it always seemed a little too close to home sometimes too, like Gamma World was fantasy, of like what happens if the worst happens here. Let's try and rebuild things. Whereas Twilight 2000 is kind of like, okay, things went sideways and now we're just going to try and survive and maybe get home, and so it in some ways, I think it could have been fun. But in some ways it might've been like, ooh, this is less a game and more of a, like, I mean, they didn't have the moniker preppers, but it was kind of the idea of, this is what preppers are prepping for, sort of thing. So, yeah, I've always been interested in it. It was kind of big, back then, but I hadn't heard about it much since college. So I don't know that they released a whole bunch of stuff since then, or if I just was not aware of it.
Well, apparently this is the 4th edition of the game.
So I have not been aware of it.
Unbeknownst to me, I somehow bought it on RPG Now. I discovered that or Drive Through RPG. I discovered that like a couple weeks ago. It just was sitting there. I'm like, oh, hey, check this out. That's another podcast topic. Stuff we bought from Drive Through RPG that we had no idea that we owned. But yeah, that's a future topic. So aside from the apocalypse, I went on a 24-mile backpacking trip with my son, 24 miles over 2 days, so about 12 miles each day.
Yeah, I think we had talked about that a little bit before when we last recorded. But yeah, yes. I hadn't heard. You obviously survived.
We did. It was tough because I think before when last we spoke, I think I was prepping for it, and now we've actually done it. And so I think lessons learned. Estimating is hard. This is always hard for humans. But we looked at the map, we measured it, thought it was going to be about 10 miles. Turned out to be practically more like 12 on the ground, right?
Mm.
And so it was good. I mean, they made it. Myself and the scouts and my son all made it through, but I think it was good experience to have because there are certain things that you will only learn if you hike a certain distance, right? If you go for a 5-mile hike or even like a 5-mile run or whatever, you learn one set of things. But when you go for 10 miles, now there's stuff that starts to fail and problems you start to have that you don't have if you only walk for 5 miles.
Right.
And so the perfect example of this was my son needed new boots, which we didn't know until we were already well into the backpacking trip. And so although we had gotten our awesome sock liners, which totally worked, I got no blisters.
Excellent.
He got blisters because his toes kept jamming up against the front of his boots.
Ouch. Right. Yeah, those are not good blisters at all.
Yeah. And then also I realized, and this is why we're doing all this stuff, is he was carrying too much weight. Really, you're supposed to carry 20% of your body weight. And so realistically, he's a thin kid. So he probably should have been carrying somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 pounds. And he was probably carrying more like 25 pounds.
Got it.
And all those pounds matter, especially we made foolish mistakes. We got there was a backpacking pack he was supposed to carry, or there was a backpacking tent that he was supposed to use.
Mm-hmm.
And he decided he wanted to use one of the troops' tents. Cool. We'll swap it out. But in doing so, he added 2 pounds to his pack.
Right. Because they weren't meant for backpacking.
Right. Well, they're like 2-person tents. And if you were, 17 and weighed 175 pounds, it wouldn't be a big deal.
Right.
But my son is not there yet.
Got it. Yep.
And so every pound really matters. And so for me, it wasn't as big of a deal. I was probably carrying too much as well. Yeah. So lessons learned. We're going again this coming weekend. It's going to be a shorter backpacking trip. It's going to be 10 miles over 2 days. But I get to try out my new sleeping bag. I got a Nemo Forte 20 sleeping bag, which means you can sleep in it down to 20 degrees, but you won't be comfortable.
Okay.
But if it's it'll be comfortable at 30, it'll keep you alive at 20.
Got it. Okay.
Which is important.
Yes. Yes.
Because 2 years ago, we went camping overnight for what's called the Klondike. It's this big thing where all the scouts come together and do winter skills stuff.
Yep.
And it was 0. And 0 is cold.
That's cold. Yep.
0 is no joking cold.
I remember doing the Klondike when I was in Boy Scouts, and we built a sled, kind of like a dog sled, but pulled by Boy Scouts.
Yes.
And we had the sled race at one point, but it was 4 inches of snow on the ground when we went camping. So that was a cold night. It was cold.
Yeah. I mean, to give people an idea, we woke up in the morning and the eggs had frozen.
Oh,
right.
Oh,
the oil had frozen. Everything had frozen.
Okay.
Right. So it was quite the It was a great learning experience for everybody.
Yes.
But man, was that cold. And I will tell you, I personally feel the difference in 20 degrees. 20 degrees is, you think, oh, that's just 20 degrees. The difference between 0 and 20 is significantly different than the difference between, say, 70 and 90.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Like 0 and 20 feels like 20 degrees felt like it was a spring day.
Yep.
After the sun was up and you're actually like, up and moving again, right?
Yep.
So yes, the rating of your sleeping bag is very important. So we shall see how it goes. This should be the one that I'm hopefully taking to Philmont when we go next year and we go on this huge 12-day, 60-mile backpacking trip. And I'm hoping it's going to work out because it was the cheaper option.
Okay.
There's another option that has synthetic liner. The more expensive option, which is like twice the price, is a down liner, but it compacts down more and it's lighter.
Got it.
But we'll see. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah, I remember reading back when I was doing more backpacking, was like, in order to cut the weight down, there were some backpackers that would cut the handle off their toothbrushes to save like fractions of ounces, and like they did that with like all their gear so that they could carry as little as possible because they did not want to carry all that if they didn't have to.
Yeah, I mean it's a big thing, right? Like the more that weight weighs on you, it seems kind of obvious, but after you've been going for a while, it really starts to bear down. So you really want to trim everything that you can. And then the challenge is, or the secret to backpacking is, this isn't true for necessarily everything because you can, like you say, cut the handle off your toothbrush. But generally speaking, the lighter gear is more expensive.
Yes.
Which I actually got a new stove, which is another example of it. It's called a Whisperlight. It's like this tiny little stove. It's really cool. One of my friends who's going on the trip also has one of these things, but it's like igniting a miniature inferno every time you light it. Seriously, I saw him do it the first couple of times. Like, Bill, are you sure that you're doing it correctly? So that's what I'm doing this weekend, is playing around with the Whisperlight and seeing, okay, let's see if I can do this. It's a little bit terrifying, just a little bit terrifying.
Make sure you have a fire extinguisher nearby. Yeah,
right.
So,
or at least a good pile of dirt.
Okay. Yes.
That will be this coming weekend. And so when not backpacking, I've been playing Fire Emblem Fate's Birthright, which is one of these video games that the title just keeps getting longer and longer. One of my friends at work turned me on to Fire Emblem. And so this is a Japanese style role-playing game with a kind of like a squad level combat focus. Like you have like an army, but it's really only like 30 people, right? So it's more aligned with the squad than a full-on massive army.
Got it.
And so it's got deep story built around combat and relationships. As in previous versions of this, your characters, like when they fight together, they develop, or alongside one another, they can develop relationships with one another. And those relationships continue between the combats, where they have little dialogues and you can do some things to encourage relationships between them. And then if they get close enough, they have kids. Oh. And then because of
okay.
So, then there's various hand waviness that allows those kids to join you in the fight.
Got it.
So in the previous iteration of this, gosh, now I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, the previous game, it was a time travel thing. You had traveled backwards in time, and so whenever people in your army had kids, their kids were also traveling back in time to join you in the fight.
Got it.
In Fate's Birthright, you're at a pocket dimension whenever you're between fights. So your kids manifest in different pocket dimensions, and then you go and find them, and then they join the fight.
Interesting.
Jump through however many story hoops you want to get to the point where the kids help and join you in the fight.
Right.
The funny thing about it is there's like the way the people who've been playing this for years, as I learned from my friend, do it in like a de facto hardcore mode, which is never let anybody die in one of your combats.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so what that practically means, because nobody can get resurrected, is that if you do a combat and somebody dies, you power off your DS, kill the game, and then come back in again and play it again.
Like play from the beginning or
no, just that particular combat.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
From your last save point, but some of these combats can take a while, right?
Right.
And so they introduced the the kinder, gentler Fire Emblem, which of course all of the people who've been playing the game forever scoffed at, which is, well, we'll let people die during combat, but then they're back and whole and hearty at the end of the fight. And so, well, that seems like cheating.
Okay.
I don't know why I found myself playing in hardcore mode, but
I mean, that sounds a lot more friendly to people who don't have hundreds and hundreds of hours to sink into a Japanese role playing game. You know?
Yes, and I don't. So I don't know why I'm actually playing it this way. I shouldn't be doing it. Aside from the fact that it's on my DS and I can take it where I go, and a lot of times, like this has been my go-to game when I go on like long trips. You know, you're flying to Portland or something from the East Coast. You got 5 hours on a plane, or like one time I took a train to Minnesota. It was a 24-hour train ride, so I played a heck of a lot of Fire Emblem on that particular trip.
Got it.
And it takes me years. I mean, the last game took me like 3 years to complete. So
right.
Not playing consistently. It's one of those games like you pick up, you play it for a bunch, then you're like, I'm tired of this.
Got it.
Put it down.
and then later, I haven't played Fire Emblem in a little while. Let's pick it back up again.
Yeah. I wonder where that is. And so then the last thing, which I have not actually had a chance to play, my kids got it, which is Nintendo 3D All-Stars, which is Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and the game they really wanted, which was Super Mario Galaxy, which this is just pure nostalgia for my kids because they started playing this, I think, when my daughter was 5 and my son was 3.
Okay.
Right. Like, or maybe like 2.5, something like that. Right. So my daughter was really into this game, and then they played it for like 2 years, and they would play it together, and like they would just sit like, my son would watch my daughter playing it because she's 3 years older than him. And like, so they have all of these great memories of playing this game together. And now, you know, it's been a while since it came out. It came out in the early 2000s, I guess. And so now there's this re-release and they're just right back into it. Now they're not actually playing it together because their schedules don't align, but they were super excited to have it come out.
Cool. I think I still have my 64 somewhere around here. Actually, I know I do somewhere. Actually, it's probably in the game room. Because I had, what was it? Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. And so my girls have played those with the original cartridge and stuff. So,
oh, wow.
So I don't know that they've ever finished them, but those were some of the ones that I've finished on the 64. So
I don't think we've talked about this. My son played Majora's Mask and Majora's, right? Not Majora's. But Majora's, I never played it. Okay. And I'm still trying to beat Ocarina of Time. I'll get there eventually. I'm in the final temple. But he went on and he played all of the Zelda games, and he played Majora's Mask, and he played it at a time when he was like 7, maybe.
Yeah. There's some really creepy stuff in there.
Right. And he's like, this was a messed up, like, and he's like, at the time I didn't realize how creepy and weird it was. Right. Like at that, because he was just playing it as a kid.
Yeah. But it was like, it's Zelda. It's not supposed to be creepy and weird, but Majora's Mask was the one weird one.
Right. And so in retrospect, he can now see that.
Like the Re-Dead, which are basically zombies that jump on you and try and eat your head, you know?
Right.
It's just, it's a weird one. But yeah, it was pretty fun, but that's one that parents probably didn't realize that a 7-year-old may not want to play it by themselves.
And somehow he did. Like, it's funny, like, you know, in retrospect, like we were talking about just reminiscing. And I think we've talked about this before. Like my kids are 17 and 14. So they're of an age where now they can start having nostalgic things for their aspects of their childhood, but also be able to look through it through like semi-adult eyes and realize, okay, that was kind of messed up. So what have you been up to? Yeah,
it's been weird the last couple of weeks. I think we last talked about it where I was interested in, Aaron and I had a 5-year-ish plan to go sailing in the Caribbean, Bahamas. And if we found we liked it, and once we got experienced enough, maybe do a North Atlantic crossing and sail around Europe and such. So we've been really digging into that in terms of like watching other people who are doing that basic same sort of thing, the live aboard sailing. We've looked at sailboats and we've looked at trawlers, which are kind of like RVs of the sea, is the way I would put it. But basically, we're really more keen on the sailboat type of thing because, you know, low to no emissions. In fact, we're even thinking about like if we get we're looking at most of the boats and people that do this will buy an older boat and then they'll retrofit a bunch of stuff. And one of the things that is expensive to maintain is like the diesel engines that are usually in these things. So there are a contingent of people that are replacing the diesel engines with an electric motor. And there are some companies out there that actually make electric motors for these things as well. Depending upon where we buy the price range of where we fall, we may end up doing that. Like just today, we were watching a guy who normally it's a couple, but he was by himself anchoring in a bay during a hurricane. And so showing all the prep that he did and everything like that. Like they did it intentionally. There wasn't that like, oops, we got caught out. There's suddenly a hurricane here. Anyone who's like smart about things knows when hurricane season is and knows to watch the weather and has figured out already where to weather things out. So they picked this bay particularly and, put down anchors and took everything off of it. And it was really interesting to watch that. We've also seen some shipwreck stuff that have happened. So we want to go in with eyes open and have not been turned off to it yet. So our 5-year plan is still, kids will be in college, maybe sell the house, maybe not sell the house because the kids might be going to a college nearby. So they might just stay here. The idea would be buy an inexpensive boat, upgrade it or change out some things that we don't like with things that we do. I've got a decent amount of woodworking skill, so I can do a decent amount of that and some electronics work, etc. I am equally keen to both relax on a boat in the Caribbean or Bermuda or wherever or on a beach or whatever, and yet still be doing woodworking and or electronics projects whenever I feel like it.
Sounds like you'd be able to do both.
Yeah. It is very highly likely we'd be able to do both. A friend of mine, Bob, he's kind of already doing it. He has a 30-plus-year-old boat that he is rehabbing in Lake Erie or Superior. What's the one next to Ohio? Is it Erie?
I think that's Erie.
Okay. Yeah, he's near Cleveland. He's near Cleveland. I knew it last week. I forgot this week. But he had invited us up to say, like, yeah, if you want to go sailing anytime. And then, of course, COVID hit this year, so we didn't do it. And then I talked to him and he said, next year, you might have to take a plane down to the Caribbean to do that with us. I'm like, that doesn't sound like such a bad thing to do. One, we'll see if we like it. Because we'll be on a boat about the same size as the one we're looking for. And he'll kind of show us the ropes a little bit of sailing. We might have him on as a guest if this goes on. We'll see.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. I did talk about woodshop stuff. So I have been able to work in the workshop more. I really like the new layout that I've finally been able to do now that all the drywall and stuff is up. Built a new floor lamp. We had some old telescopes that had some wooden tripod legs that look pretty cool, but the telescopes weren't really good. And we have a much nicer telescope. So I took the mountings of it, the tripod part, and I turned them into some floor lamps. They look pretty nice. We use them around. One's up in the game room and one is in Aaron's office. So that was fun to do. And then I got a lathe for my birthday. So thanks to Aaron. So I'll be turning pens and bowls and maybe wooden lightsabers. We'll see. Who knows? It's a wood lathe. It's not a metal lathe. Metal lathes are more expensive, and I wanted a wood lathe to start with at the very least. It's a good sized lathe. A friend of mine recommended this particular style lathe because he works on lathes a lot and that was his research of it. And so I've got a pen kit prepared, but have yet to have a chance to actually actually turn on it yet with the pen kit. I've turned a couple of things just for practice. So that's yet another new woodworking hobby of mine. So I collect hobbies. I don't often let them go, which is kind of a problem for me. Only a couple more things. There's more, but I can't remember all of it. So I probably could go through my bullet journal and actually look at it because I would have written it down there. But two things I did was I listened to The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin and the, oh my gosh, amazing narrator, Robin Miles. It was hard to get into like chapter 1, 2-ish. But once I got past that, it was really, really good. So N.K. Jemisin, she's a Hugo winning author. And this book itself is set in New York. It's very trippy to start with. And so it was hard for me to get into at the beginning. And I had that problem with another book of hers. So now that I've actually listened to this one, I may go back and read the other one. But it was basically the idea that there are avatars of cities that embody the city. And so she also takes that and kind of takes the Cthulhu mythos and turns it on its head a bit, where there's this Cthulhu type entity who takes the form of this lady in white that is basically trying to take over the city or take over this part of reality. And so the city, and the reason why is because the city is being born, sort of thing. It's becoming an entity, not just a place. And so there's the main avatar, and then there's an avatar for each borough in the city. And the main avatar is injured in the very beginning, in that first chapter or two. And then so these other boroughs, these other people become avatars, and they suddenly get all this information, and then they have to find each other. They have to decide if they like each other. They have to battle this woman in white and her minions, all while trying to find the main avatar of New York. And I don't want to say a whole lot more about it other than it's really good. I really like it. I really recommend the audiobook. Normally, I wouldn't recommend an audiobook over like reading the book in print, but Robin Miles is an amazing narrator and does, voices for all the characters and really gives it a good sense of place and urgency where it's needed. So it's really good. The other book, and I didn't write it down here, that I did just finish was Peace Talks Battleground, Dresden Files Battleground, which came out like the day after my birthday. And I read it I started reading it that night and then finished it in the morning the next day. It was a really good book. I had been left a little after Peace Talks, which was the one right before it. And Battleground really tells me that Peace Talks and Battlegrounds were one book, but it was too long, so the publisher asked to split it up or something like that, because Peace Talks felt incomplete. And then after reading Battleground, it felt like one complete story, one complete chapter in Dresden's life. It's got a lot of highs and a lot of lows. It is a giant roller coaster ride. You have to read Peace Talks first because it's the kind of the setup. But Battleground is a really, really good book.
Yeah, at some point I need to get back to Dresden. I read the first book because I was going to do a Fiasco themed,
Dresden Files.
Dresden Files themed Fiasco game. And I'm like, I can't go into this game without having any idea what's going on in the Dresden Files. I think we talked about this briefly before.
Yeah, Dresden Files would fit very well with Fiasco, honestly.
Yeah, it did. It did. And I'll second your comment on the narration. Robin Miles also narrated the 5th season, which is another one of Jemisin's books from her Broken Earth trilogy. So she's a great world builder. I mean, I really enjoyed the book. I was thinking about reading the sequel this summer, but with COVID, they're really good books, but it was really intense. And I kind of just needed some popcorn fiction. I'll come back to this in the fall. I need to read some pew pew starships blowing up. I need to just talk about capers and people off to save the galaxy, and I'll come back to.
It sounds a little bit like my experience with Chuck Wendig's Wanderers book, which came out shortly before or right as COVID was hitting, and I read that book, and it's basically about a pandemic that goes haywire around the world and is kind of an apocalypse for humanity. And it's I read all that, and then the news of COVID starts spreading, and I'm like, oh, this is not good. and it's not a real big spoiler, but or anything, but like the main cause of it of the pandemic in Wanderers is this disease called white mask that comes from bats.
Oh, geez, little close to home.
Little close to home. Yeah. So the sequel to Wanderers is coming out this year, something like that. It's going to go on my reading list, but it's probably going to wait a little while before I pick it up because Chuck Wendick can do some pretty brutal stuff in a good way if you're into the fiction. But right now it's hitting a little close to home. So two more things. I was listening to a podcast. I really enjoy it very much on the gaming front, called Daydreaming About Dragons by Judd Carlman. He is one half of the duo that did Sons of Kryos way back in the day. And I have it listed here by Judd Carlman and Inspiration Goat. Inspiration Goat is really just some sound effects that Judd puts in of a goat, which actually just might be him making sounds like a goat. But the idea is he gives him inspiration and then talks about like a particular thing for gaming. And then he also does some feedback shows and other things like that. But basically it's like what happens. I should have been prepped for this part of it. But like the idea that like he doesn't like say mystery campaigns. He does not like mystery campaigns because if the players miss the one clue, they can't solve the mystery, sort of thing. And I sent some feedback in talking about Brindlewood Bay about like, hey, this other game where it's a really creative way to do a mystery where there's a lot less prep time, because most mystery games require enormous prep to get it so that, the players don't instantly know who the killer is at the beginning or never figure out who the killer is at the end,
Yeah, I mean, we played a Call of Cthulhu game once at Gen Con, just like after hours, like in our hotel room, and they completely missed the one clue that they needed to get, and then of course the world ended because it was an important clue.
Right, and that's one of the things that Judd was talking about in that particular episode. So I recommend it. He's actually looking forward to when we finally release our podcast, listening to it. But yeah, I recommend that one. It's a good one. And finally, one thing that all of our listeners and you have not been hearing is the squeak of my old chair. My old chair, it's still here in my office, but I dare not touch it because it literally fell in half. The chair part fell off of the gas shock pedestal part on it. And it like I can sit it back on there, but if you sit in the wrong spot, it acts kind of like a tipping forward ejector seat sort of thing and will just fall apart again, which is really annoying because it was like a $400 chair that I bought less than a year and a half ago. You would think it would have stood up to things more. But on the plus side, though, I work remotely, but most of the office itself is in St. Louis and I'm in Indianapolis, and they're getting all new chairs and things like that. And that's when I found out that Herman Miller Aaron chairs, there is a used market for them, and they're still in very good condition. And so I looked it up, and it turns out that there's a place in Indianapolis that sold them. I went out there and took a look and picked one up, and even better, my office is paying for it. So
wow, very nice.
I've sat on them before. They're very good chairs. They're usually like $1,000 or $1,500.
Oh, wow.
And used, they're about $500. So had I known a year and a half ago that they were only $500, I would have gotten one then, because it is very comfortable, especially for someone like us who is sitting in a chair all day coding or talking to people.
Yeah, so all the squeaking you've heard this episode has been my chair because I forgot to swap it out for one of the folding chairs that doesn't squeak. So I've been sitting here very patiently, like
not moving.
I've been trying not to move and like muting myself whenever I need to stretch just to avoid the going on in the background. So we're getting there, folks. We're getting there.
Yep.
Mine has not fallen apart yet, so perhaps I should get. My wife actually needs a new chair. She's needed one since the beginning of COVID, but
yeah, I would look up. Like, if depending upon your budget, but like I would look up, like you can just type in Herman Miller Aaron chairs used, or basically it's office supply places that will sell them. Yeah, so like they'll have a bunch of steel case furniture. They'll have basically everything you would normally see in an office. But, places go out of business, places upgrade, places, move or whatever, and they'll just sell their stuff back. And then these places will buy all that stuff, take the best pieces, and then resell them.
Gotcha. I'll have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, the place I went to, their main headquarters is like in Wisconsin or Minnesota or Grand Rapids. Yes, in Michigan. And they've got like 300 plus there.
Oh, wow.
But so that basically it's like we normally stock about 4 of them. But then when we run low, we just order more. And it's got almost all the bells and whistles that like you would normally pay through the nose for. It doesn't have the headrest, but I don't need that. But it does have the lumbar support, which normally is like $50 to $100 more.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's pretty nice to do. But that's it for me. You have something for our main topic, though.
I do, and this is well, it's going to be an interesting main topic, right?
Yeah.
So we are 40-something gamers, and so I will tell you my tale of woe as a 40-something gamer prior to COVID. I'm typically the game master for my group. And so in real world gaming, when we're meeting in my gaming room, I'll be standing there. I've got my notes in front of me and what have you. And over the last couple of years, there's a phenomenon that has been occurring where I can't actually read my notes anymore or read the rule books or what have you without putting on reading glasses. And then this gets kind of obnoxious because then every time you go to look up at your friends gathered around the table, you can't, they're all blurry, right? Because I don't have really strong reading glasses, but it's also a factor of, you look up, and if you try and stare at people in the distance with reading glasses, like, to me, I get a little nauseous. Like, it messes with my head.
Got it.
And so what do? You constantly take the glasses on and off, right? Because I don't really need glasses for vision. I do if I'm driving, like, long distances. But for the most part, my distance vision has actually gotten slightly better as I've gotten older because that's how that works. But my up-close vision has not been great. And my phone, I bumped up the font. My watch, I haven't quite bumped up the font on my Apple Watch yet, but I was getting close. I'm like, you know what? The time has come to get progressive lenses. And this was inspired because my son needed new glasses because over the summer, his cousin accidentally broke his. And so they've been taped together for like the last 4 months. So he needed new glasses. So we went and got new glasses. And if I'm going to go, I might as well just like actually get them. So I got my first pair of progressive lenses, which are supposed to help with all of this, but you already have progressive lenses. So I'm just speaking to the guy who actually can tell me how they work.
Yeah.
Or how they've worked for you.
Yeah. I was both happy and disappointed because I went in, I was like, okay, I think I need bifocals. Because looking at up close things was very difficult. I had reading glasses, but I was also starting to notice that, like my distance vision was a little blurrier than normal. For years, I had an astigmatism, and that seems to have changed, which I didn't think was a thing that happened. But human bodies being human bodies, who knows? But I ended up getting, like, if I didn't get progressives, I would have trifocals.
So I guess we should actually explain what the heck we're talking about, right? So traditional bifocals, you've got like a piece of glass on the bottom, which one prescription, and a piece of glass on top, which is a different prescription.
Yep.
Right. Or it's ground that way, right? Like, I guess in the olden days, they were actually 2 physical separate pieces of glass, right?
Yeah, and it's visible. Like you can tell the difference between the top and the bottom are 2 different prescriptions. And progressive lenses basically blurs that line so that you don't see, like, you as the person wearing them don't have that abrupt shift. But also the people looking at you just see basically one prescription. You and I, as we were talking about before we started, is we have basically the trifocal version of those, which is at the bottom of the glasses. You kind of like look down just a little bit to read a book. So the very bottom of the glasses is the reading, and then the middle of the glasses is kind of like a computer length away. So 3-4 feet away. Good monitor direction, and then the top of the glasses is distance vision. So you kind of, where the glasses sit on your face, just kind of you raise your eyes up a little bit, and then you can drive with them basically.
Right.
Yeah, I was warned that I might feel weird or uncomfortable when I first started, and I don't know, it just felt natural to me. I used to wear reading glasses, and I would have to take them off and put them on, and take them off and put them on, and just not having to do that. Any uncomfortableness that I either shoved it to the back of my mind or just didn't even feel it, because it just felt a lot better to have the glasses on all the time. And I guess my eyes look in the appropriate places, when I'm reading, when I'm looking at the computer, when I'm driving, that I didn't have to adjust my eyes' behavior to work within the progressives.
Right, because they talk about, so when I was at the eye doctor, they were telling me about the lenses and like getting ready for them. They talk about things like be careful around stairs, because you have to figure out how to, like, it's not quite the same. Your perception is not quite the same.
Yeah, if you don't tilt your head down, you're going to look through the reading area, and that might be a little off in terms of like how you're going to do it.
They also talk, it messes a little bit with your peripheral vision because of the way that the glasses are ground to be able to get you the trifocally type functionality. And also they just talk like, for some people, as you're, and I guess I'll figure out in a couple of weeks if I'm one of these people, like you got to train your brain to do it. And I haven't been wearing glasses a lot. I don't know if you wore your glasses a lot prior to getting your new glasses.
Yeah, I did.
So for me, it's going to be going from wearing no glasses, well, just the reading glasses, to all the time glasses, which in of itself is kind of an adjustment. But I'm hoping that means that once COVID gets to a point where my friends and I can actually start gaming together again, I can solve this problem at the gaming table. I can stop holding my phone. Like it's started getting a little ridiculous, right? Like You put the phone out and it's like, maybe a little bit further, but now, maybe the font's a little small.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I had the same thing. Like I would have the reading glasses and I'd be working at the computer, but then when I read a book, it wouldn't quite be in focus. So I actually had 2 sets of reading glasses to kind of go between things. Like if I was trying to paint a miniature, I'd want like a lot of extra magnification, which is effectively the reading glasses. But then to view the computer, I'd have a different set. And so that's why they had the 3 different zones. The one thing that I have seen that is a negative in today's gaming age with progressives is they really suck for VR. Oh, okay. Because you want to look up and suddenly you're looking up through the distance.
Oh, right.
And then you look down, you're looking down through the reading. So really that middle band is really where everything's focused. So what I actually ended up doing was middle prescription that I knew, I got a pair of reading glasses that I take these progressives off and I put those reading glasses on, and then I put the VR helmet on with it. That works great. It would be even better if I could adjust the lenses in the VR helmet so I didn't have to wear glasses at all. But the Oculus Rift S does not have that ability.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, the reading glasses help a lot.
Right, and they're not actually painting the imagery directly onto your retinas yet. So yeah, it's a few years, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's been over a year, so I need to get another checkup to see if my prescription's changed at all. But still, really enjoying these. So they're much better than when I had them before. Not as good as when I took the lasers to the eyes when I had LASIX and didn't need to wear glasses at all. That was awesome. But that is not something, that the normal age changes are not super correctable with things like LASIK and stuff like that. So, and LASIK's expensive.
Gotcha.
So,
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, my other use case is sitting on the sofa, like doing campaign prep. Mm-hmm. Just, got something on the TV in the background, right? Like maybe got John Wick playing or something. And then, you go to look up and it's like, so you're doing the looking over the top of the lenses thing, right? Like, which, so one of my friends on Twitter had said, so how does that make you feel? Right. Like, basically asking, does it make you feel old? I'm like, well, no, I mean, I guess it's kind of annoying, right? In that like things have changed. I kind of felt the same way in high school when I had to get my first prescription for distance, when I like had to admit to myself that I couldn't see the board anymore. I mean, there's certainly a getting older piece to this. And you can't ignore it because, I mean, your vision changes over time, but it's really just more, and now I have these new things. All right, whatever.
I same as you. Like when I was in elementary school, I had better than 20/20 vision. And then the astigmatism really kicked in, and then I didn't anymore. And that was really annoying. And I just didn't wear my glasses for a long time. But it was mostly distance vision was... Right. Actually, I don't even remember, because I could still read everything. It just wasn't quite clear. You know, there wasn't quite enough clarity. Right. And then when I graduated from college, I really needed to start wearing glasses at that point, because when I first noticed that I really needed them was when I started working, and I noticed that I would start about 3 or 4 feet away from the monitor like a normal person, and then in about an hour I would be about 6 inches away from the monitor and go, wonder why my head hurts and I'm 6 inches away from the monitor. Maybe I need glasses. And that's so it's the changing and like going from better than 20/20 to needing glasses all the time was really frustrating. This just felt like, oh, okay, we finally got it right now.
Right. Yeah. And I got to say, the other thing was, like, if anything, the whole I'm getting older thing kicked in when, first of all, the index in the freaking D&D player's handbook is microscopic. I think I would have had a hard time reading some of the indexes in some of these RPG books when I was 20. Yeah. Because the font is like, oh, well, you know, indexes are cool and all, but we don't want them to take up as much real estate as everything else in the book.
Right.
But the real, like, yes, I have a problem and I need to do something about it was when I got the readers, right? Like once you pick up the reading glasses and go, oh, wow, look, yeah, I can actually read the index. I can keep up with the whippersnappers again.
Yep.
That was the real moment of truth. Right now, it's just like, it's a revision to the technology, step. Right? Yep. Like, yeah, should hopefully be better as you've described.
Yep.
But we'll see.
Yep.
We shall see.
Although I do have to say 5th edition has a much better, not layout, like design than 3rd edition or 3.5, because they realized, hey, putting a fake lined paper look behind all the text makes it really hard to read. Let's not do that again.
Indeed it does.
Even without glasses.
And I will praise WotC for actually including a legitimate index in all of the core rule books for 5th edition, because the 4th edition player's handbook index was like, I don't know, a half a page, maybe a page. Oh. It was obnoxious. It was just enough not to be helpful.
It's like 3 or 4 pages, I think, is the index in the new player's handbook.
Yes, the new one is a respectable index. It's just a wee bit small for me to be able to see. So I'm looking forward to getting the new glasses. I'll report out once they actually show up.
Cool.
Yeah, Grand Adventures. Maybe I can bump down the font size on my Kindle now.
Probably. The one thing I always notice is I need to turn on the backlight on my Kindle. So that helps.
I'm sorry, what you need what on your Kindle?
To turn on the backlight.
Oh.
To help me read it. Font size I did bump up a little bit, but the backlight is usually what really helps, because otherwise it just all seems a little bit gray.
Right.
Well, thank you all for listening. If you have any feedback, we definitely love feedback. We still don't have an email at the time of this recording, but if you visit layerofsecrets.com, there will be probably an email there, and some sort of feedback. So if you've got some topic ideas or you have your own thoughts on what we